Welcome to the Healthcare Nation podcast. I'm your host, Rick Janata, and we continue the Big Challenges series with a focus on bioethics, its applications within emerging technologies, the fascination with aging and its implications for longevity, sources of truth and information and how that informs policy and politics. And there's no better expert in the field to unpack these issues than Dr. Arthur Caplan. So a little bit about Dr. Caplan. He's currently the Drs. William F. and Virginia Conley Mitty Professor and founding head of the Division of Medical Ethics at NYU's Grossman School of Medicine in New York City. Prior to that, he was at the University of Pennsylvania, where he created the Center for Bioethics in the Department of Medical Ethics. He's the author and editor of over 35 books and more than 800 papers in peer-reviewed journals. His most recent books, Vaccination Ethics and Policy and Getting to Good Research Integrity in Biomedicine, are must-reads. He served on a number of notable and impactful national and international committees. He's a frequent contributor in press and media, and he's one of the 100 most influential people in biotechnology as noted by Scientific American magazine. So quick disclaimer, opinions expressed are those of the hosts and guests and are for informational purposes only. Please go to our website, healthcarenationpodcast.com, for more information. Check out our YouTube channel. And don't forget to tune into the podcast at your Apple and Spotify podcast channels. So with that said, welcome, Dr. Arthur Caplan. Dr. Caplan, again, so great to have you here on the Healthcare Nation podcast. We've got so much to talk about. I don't even know where to start, but I thought thematically I would kind of take the lead from the previous episodes and maybe hone in on the metaverse, AI, ChatGPT, the rising ethical, legal, social challenge that really are part of all of that. It's a loaded proposition for sure. I think the recent headlines highlighting ChatGPT, they're all over the place. Let's start off. What are your thoughts on that as a topic now? Am I focused on something that is as important as I think it is?
Well, I think it's very important. I think the focus is justified. On the other hand, we're early days with ChatGPT. As much as people are saying, hey, this algorithm writes a pretty good article or is very useful in mental health therapy, we're not quite there yet in terms of having a program that can really, I'm going to say, creatively, innovatively respond, pick up all the nuances of human interaction and communication. It's very good, but it's kind of a program that, grinds through billions of bits of information and learns a little bit how we tend to think and then spits it back at us. And we get very excited because we recognize it because it sounds like us, whatever it's doing. But it's still early days. So you've got algorithms that are being promoted, let's say. Use this as your psychotherapist, use this as your mental health counselor. I don't like that yet because those programs have not really been vetted by professional organizations like American Psychiatric, American Psychological, National Association of Social Workers to say, yeah, they work and they're doing the kind of right responses. The people who say they seem responsive and helpful are the users, but that isn't sufficient. It's also got to be the providers who think they're doing the job. We haven't settled privacy, confidentiality, liability, malpractice. There's a bunch of topics that you need to settle. But I'll say this, it is the future. There is no doubt about that.
Yeah, when I think about that, if I fast forward in my mind, the integration certainly of artificial intelligence into everyday products and the decision-making, and algorithms that really underpin and inform that, I have big concerns about that with respect to the ethical risks of the algorithms, particularly when you look at the acquisition actively and passively of maybe things that are happening all around you in your home. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah. So many of us have turned on our little magic balls that we can ask questions of. The Siri, tell me something. And again, I think there's a lot of tracking and surveillance that's going on that we haven't really explicitly and in an informed way consented to. So on the one hand, this kind of surveillance helps build better algorithms, more responsive algorithms, even you might say more personalized algorithms. We're in an era now where everybody's talking about personalized medicine. And I think it would be probably attractive to many people to say we've got a personalized wellness program for you that we built up by watching you for a year and seeing what bad things you do, what bad things you order on the internet, what kind of junk you're making for dinner, or the fact that you're sitting in the same chair for 18 hours a day and never exercise. That's all great, but it's being done without consent. So you've got to have full consent to do this. And then how are they going to market my information to other people? Again, no rules, no clear guidelines. That's not acceptable right now.
Yeah, I think that what you're getting to is also, I think, an important point that regulators, governments can't keep up with this with respect to AI regulation that's in place, even monitoring this. And the example you
know,
gave,
the only people that seem to me to keep up with it are equity investors. Every 5 minutes, I see them buying another company, another intervention, another service, whether it's, get your erectile dysfunction drugs online or buy your mental health medicines, or are you bald? We have the right algorithm-driven company for you, or whatever it is. Venture capital is all over this. Regulators, ethicists, lawyers, still lagging.
Mm-hmm. I'm thinking about this notion of a digital twin and everything you described, that when you acquire this data on someone, maybe have an analog persona that can be pressure tested in a variety of ways, obviously clinical ways. I would see that as potentially a good thing when it comes to drugs, et cetera. But there's a lot of other implications for that from an ethical perspective, particularly when you think about algorithms and applying that. What's your thoughts on that? Digital twins?
Yeah. I mean, if you can create a pretty good imitator of me, meaning going to respond the way I would, sounds like me, artificial voice creation, you can do a lot of bad things in my name. Everything from, giving a contract an oral sign-off because it sounds just like my voice, to having a wide array of digital responses that people could use for a whole variety of purposes that I would not consent to. My friends in Nigeria with all their requests for send us money, you're going to inherit a fortune. Some of that my digital twin could be using and get right into my bank account. Again, we're not going back from this technology. Those who say, it's going too fast, they're right. But it's not like we're going to go backwards and get rid of it. That is not going to happen. So the challenge is, can we set up quickly international agreements, international conversations? We don't want to stifle the technology, but at the same time, we don't want it just running amok. And I'm a little disappointed that I'm not seeing the speed on the ethics and the law to match the speed of the, if you will, algorithmic innovation.
All right. Those are great points. I also think about dependency on the technology. A lot, not unlike that of a child to an adult, the way we learn, how we get dependent on our life cycles. Once you mess with that calculus, the intelligence dependent questions come into play here. When you, I hate to say it, but kind of dumb down what we're doing, because I've become so, tied at the hip to this technology that I can't navigate without having an app for that. I mean, where are we going with dependency in AI? And what about the ethical issue?
I keep seeing people like Elon Musk saying, well, he wants to develop a neural implant so that in a way a wire could be run from your computer into your brain, and, speed of download of information and responsiveness to your states of mind. I don't think, again, anything like that is coming in the next 10 years. We are very primitive in what we can do with trying to do brain stimulation. We do some of it at my school at NYU to try and fight addiction or depression or even Parkinson's disease, but it's very primitive. That said, I feel completely wired into my technology through my eyeballs, which are part of my brain, which are directly linked to this box on my desk that I'm using to talk to you, and that I ask questions of every 28 seconds about, who was it that played third base for the Red Sox in 1964, or whatever vital information I am seeking. I feel completely dependent on the technology. And I know this is true because when my Wi-Fi goes down, I am beside myself.
Yeah. So how can we prepare now so that we can avoid the danger, specifically with respect to this intelligent dependency on AI? And clearly, I think this even gets back to the source of truth and where we go to for our information that codifies what's going to be in these algorithms when you go for an answer.
Yeah. Well, let me get to truth in a second, but let me give you a little example. Here's a place where I think we're going to see virtual reality meet AI, is the mental health field. And if I'm someone who people think is a danger to society, currently what I do is I put you in prison, lock you up. I have to feed you and care for you. Very expensive. It doesn't seem to rehabilitate you very much. There's a lot of danger in those environments, both for prisoners and guards. It's a really antiquated approach to people with criminal or mental illness problems, institutionalization. Virtual reality, I can say, stay at home. I'm going to put something into your head that will require you to remain in a virtual world. You can perhaps have more liberty there, do certain things that you wouldn't be allowed to do in regular society, to indulge some sort of addiction you have or some sort of kind of socially unacceptable drive that you want to indulge, but it's safe in the virtual world. We'll be monitoring you all the time to see if you're getting better. We'll make sure you take your medicines virtually. We'll make sure you have mandatory therapy sessions. So if I say I'm going to put certain people into, let's call it, virtual prisons with reality meeting AI to interact with me, either to keep me there or to help make sure that I get, quote unquote, better. Well, what are my civil rights? What are my civil liberties? Can I say, no, I don't want to do that, stick me in a jail cell? Or who's to say what the ideal human behavior is if you're not hurting anybody else? Can I indulge in terrible things like child molestation in the virtual world as long as there's no real people involved? Would anybody care? Do I have to satisfy certain standards to be paroled out of this kind of AI-driven virtual reality setting? These questions are coming. It's a microcosm of what you're asking me about when we say, how are we really going to set standards? I think the whole world of prison, parole, rehabilitation is going to move into AI-driven plus virtual reality environments. But again, with what rights, with what checks and balances, who's setting the standards for saying, yep, you're better, you're cured, you can come back out into regular society. What if I don't ever want to? Do I have the right to stay there forever and be happy in my perhaps somewhat distorted world? So that's just one teeny slice of that pie.
Wow, that is an incredible insight that I had not even thought about. That's really, honestly, blowing my mind when I think about that. Let me go down the road with AI-powered addiction, though, and ask this. On one side, I could see if you were a paralyzed individual, a horrific accident, you're essentially bedridden, to be able to go into the metaverse, an AI world, would be probably an incredible, from a wellness, mental health, sense of purpose, meaning it could really add value to an individual's existence and experience, right? I mean, we would agree on that. But the dark side of a lot of this is the AI-powered addiction. We see this, perhaps I can say, video games, social media, et cetera, the algorithms that are underneath that. How do we parse this out? Who is going to make these decisions, and what moral framework and ethical, underpinning are we going to use as kind of our guide star?
Well, we already have the addiction problem, right? I mean, there are kids in South Korea who are starving to death because they don't get up to eat because they're so lost in the metaverse. They're so lost in their visual gaming, group gaming, that they literally die. We've had a couple of, not many, but a few of those situations already. So it's not a hypothetical. That is already here. Many of us are getting obese and out of shape because we're so stuck in these universes that we neglect our physical bodies. I'm sure that a lot of the childhood obesity epidemic, which causes, great disability and early death, is due to getting addicted to these, to our games and to our experiences that we have now, much less the ones that are coming, which are also going to include tactile, olfactory, multi-sensory types of experiences that'll make just a visual experience, look like grandma's AI. I mean, that we're still not really where we're going to be in terms of intensity of experience. So I think we're going to see categories of disease established that have to do with addiction to AI, inability to maintain bodily function, inability to do other tasks, requirements that certain people only be allowed to go in for certain amounts of time to prevent addiction to the AI kind of world. I think we're going to see renegades escape to the AI type of world, go offline, and there'll be communities and offers to say no reason to come back out. It's better life there. Go there. We'll get you there. We'll be illegal, but we're going to do it. And you pay us the fee, and we'll make sure the content keeps coming. By the way, complete with rip-off artists and criminals doing that too. I also think information truth starts to get even fuzzier because you can do anything in these virtual worlds, convince anybody of much of anything, or you can make an ethic or a set of facts that apply in your virtual world. Who's to say that that reality is less, quote unquote, true than the one we're used to from our biologically driven world? So I think there's a lot of work for philosophers, for example, out there to try and say, well, this is how we really understand what's true and valid, and this is how we understand what's right and wrong. And I'm going to make the prediction that it's going to be contextual relative to where you decide to live, where you decide to exist. There will be multiple worlds of truth, I believe. Again, not tomorrow, not 10 years, but down the road, there won't be one single concept of valid knowledge and truth because there won't be one single universe in which we're all living. Or think of it in simple-minded terms. What used to be thought of as the best TV show, nobody understands what that means anymore because there's too many TV shows, too many streaming services, too many options. We're not all watching the same stuff. So we have sub-communities that like what's on TV, but most of us don't know what everybody else is talking about because there's no time to watch everything.
No, it's great examples, really. But let me get back and stay on the theme of truth. And I'm fascinated with the source of truth in a post-truth world notion. And I'd like to think anyway, that there are certain immutable truths. The sun will rise this morning, right? It's the rotation of the earth, et cetera. I think.
Yeah, by the way, bad example. That won't be true in the virtual universe.
That's right.
You could have six suns rising at noon.
Right. But when there's something that we're seeking from a knowledge perspective that impacts crosswalks to our health, our well-being, our life, like we'll take the pandemic. Certainly information coming out during that period of time changed the way public policy experts, the healthcare industry, and journalists reported, et cetera, across the board, right down to, I think, the value of clinical studies that weren't peer-reviewed, maybe the race to vaccine development and the acceleration of that being called into question. These are important issues because if you come down to a scenario where the country, the nation, the world are really depending upon scientific facts to guide, a treatment, a protocol, a way to respond to a threat. What do we do who arbitrates this? What do we do with this post-truth world issue and all of these, even outside the metaverse, in real life?
Well, I'm going to say, sorry, but that's a little bit of an old school view about what truth is in the future metaverse. Even now, as you pointed out correctly, truth is in trouble because a lot of people say truth is defined according to the community that I live in. So if we're all religious believers, then truth is according to what the Koran says or what the New Testament tells me. And I don't care what Tony Fauci or CDC or somebody else tells me. Truth is within my group, within my peers, and within the community I live in. And that's how I understand it. That's what I meant when I said truth is very relativistic to the world that you live in. My definition of true is linked up to two other realities. One, you have to market and compete. Most scientists today think the truth is as established by studies, clinical trials, confirmed observation. But they don't market it. They just publish it and say, here it is. This is the truth. What COVID taught us is you got to market the truth. You're in competition with many other people who claim to be able to gain insight from magic books or communication telepathically with authorities or who knows, through prayer, whatever it is. So you don't get anywhere if you just say, here's the truth, and I'm putting it out there, and take it or leave it, but we're the scientists and we know. That's old school. Got to market, got to communicate, got to fight for your point of view to be heard, and I think that's something that we have to start doing now in the scientific community. The other thing I would say is the real test of truth is whether it works, whether it delivers, in other words, pragmatic. I say this is true. This vaccine will stop you from dying, then I give it. And if you stop dying, it's true. Whereas if I say vaccines are dangerous and cause heart problems and cause many more deaths than a disease, and that turns out by looking at the numbers that there are many more dead people who didn't vaccinate, then that's false. Truth, I think, isn't just studies. Truth is outcomes. Truth is getting where you want to go, achieving goals and purposes you want to serve. And I think that's going to become a stronger guidepost down the road, not just I did a study, and these are the methods, and we know that produces true facts, but what I study, what I understand, what I think is science produces a trip to Mars, allows you to live longer, really works to get rid of pollution in our environment, whatever. You're going to have a little bit more of a show me the outcome attitude, I think, to win the truth battle.
Oh, that is an incredible insight to wrap your head around, because it really does call into question there could be more than one truth, right? When I think about the political implications of this, the polarization in politics, do we operate with two sets of or two frameworks with respect to approaches that are informed by an individual truth for each?
I think you're going to see it. I do. Some of the goals and purposes that people will want to achieve are not the same as other people's goals and purposes. And I doubt you're going to be able to get a universal agreement on what's worth pursuing, what outcomes are worth having, what life is worth living. So I do think you're going to get a more relativistic, contextualized sense of truth. That means we have to develop a politics that allows us to navigate between different worldviews. Obviously, so far, we're not doing too well at that, whether it's sedition by those who don't want to accept other people's truth, or race hatred, or many other challenges that are out there now where people are saying your truth isn't my truth, and therefore I'm going to kill you, or I'm not going to interact with you, or I'm going to disparage and insult you. We need a better politics than that.
Yeah. I'm going to shift now to from truth to denial. And I would say this, the denial of growing old and this fascination with aging, technology, drugs. I think it's beyond just staying young, Art, when I'm saying this. And I'm saying this along the lines of, if you take a look at private equity, venture investment in the field, what you're seeing in the pharmaceutical side, obviously there's been other techniques along the way, but there's a lot more activity here now. What are the ethical implications of this? And are we on to something that is a real thing out there? I would say not just in the United States, but perhaps all over the world.
Yeah, well, this is a huge, exploding, somewhat not fully appreciated area. The chasing down of the aging, either to stop it, to reverse it, or to prevent it, all three goals, is really starting to occupy a lot of money, a lot of dreams of the rich and the wealthy, a lot of people in wealthy places, say Saudi Arabia, where they have made a big investment in anti-aging research out of their sovereign fund. As you said, a lot of billionaires and private equity people. And, the goal of being immortal, or at least living a heck of a lot longer, is not new. That's been around as a human dream in mythology and certainly in many religions with the promise of an afterlife. Although that always seemed less appealing to me. I had this horrific notion that if I lived forever or went to an afterlife and we kept having faculty meetings that I had to go to, I'd rather not be there. Maybe had to shorten up that. Certain prospects are not as attractive as others, shall we say, for immortality. But in a serious vein, people really do want to certainly slow aging and the changes of aging, debility, frailty, loss of vigor. They would like to live longer, but I think only if they can live relatively healthy. And so huge ethics issues emerge. How much money do you spend on this effort when many people are dying young from just preventable diseases? Vaccine preventable diseases, or things that we could do if we changed our diet in terms of obesity-related childhood disease and so on. Isn't it important to sort of fix this medical situation so that people can live a normal lifespan? I'm saying, 75, 80 years before we start throwing money into the pursuit of let's live to 150 kind of research. If you're going to do research on aging, is it going to be available to all, or will this just be a hyper boutique set of interventions only available to the very, very rich? Are they going to then put up with the rest of the world complaining that they can't get this technology? Will we see civil unrest and violence break out because of an elite that's living a very, very long time and the poor who aren't? Even asking basic ethics questions like, what do we make of marriage, retirement, recreation? How many careers should you have? Can society adapt to a world in which people live, I'll just make up a number, 150 to 200 years? If I get tenure at the university, do I have it for 200 years? Mm-hmm. No one's going to be able to come in and get a new job because the faculty is not going to age out for 200 years. So I think there are a lot of social engineering questions that anti-aging research, is going to raise, and they're going to have to be addressed. No shortage of ethics issues.
And I think of two issues that come to mind that probably are more near term than far. One would be gene manipulation, genetic manipulation, and the second, exploitation. You could go as far as saying, solid organs, et cetera, but use your imagination on that. The genetic manipulation side and even editing, CRISPR, where that could go, as well as the exploitation, including vulnerable populations. When you look at that to a group that perhaps is pursuing, longevity in a way that is clearly not following ethical guidelines nor moral underpinning.
Yeah, so research could involve, experimentation on embryos without anybody's permission to see if you can tweak them so that they live longer, develop longer. You could also see efforts made through genetic engineering not to fix diseases, but to try and give more immunity or to try and give more long-term hormonal vigor, improve your sex life, improve your strength. Who's regulating that? What doctors are going to be involved with that? Is that even a legitimate part of medicine? So I agree. Shorter term, yes. Genetic intervention does become part of longevity research.
Yeah. Dr. Caplan, as we round out this episode, your last thoughts on the big issues, specifically the bioethical issues. I can't help but just look at what's happening with the emerging technology, consumer space, getting into healthcare, the incredible advances. And then when we talk about AI, ChatGPT, all of that, also thinking about the loaded ethical issues that are in there. Your last thoughts on this?
I'll say, I think we're all used to a healthcare system that does a lot of its care by going to the doctor or going into a hospital. I think within 25 years, using AI, different types of virtual reality and so on, no one's going to have that system. I think that system is archaic. We're going to get our care at home. We're going to get our care sent to us over the internet, if you will. We're certainly going to be in a position where we're monitored and wearing different types of devices that say, oh, Art's got incipient or early stage cancer. Let's get there quickly and get some intervention that will slow that down. So I think part of these powerful technologies that we've been talking about are going to absolutely change, modify the entire healthcare system that we live in. We switch to prevention, we switch to wellness, we get rid of the big, gigantic hospital cathedral buildings. We're not all headed off to see specialists all the time. It's coming to us, more burden perhaps on robots and artificial attendants to help us with our health care and attend to us as we have an accident or get frail. But I see that as changing drastically.
I'll tell you on that note, Dr. Caplan, thank you so much for your time, your insights. This has been a fascinating conversation. I'm looking forward to hearing what's going to be coming out of your classroom and in your future books very soon. And I appreciate you giving us a peek and again, an insight into the bioethical issues, obviously, that are going to be associated with these advances, emerging technologies, sources of truth as we unpacked. It really is fascinating. I thank you so much, Dr. Caplan.
Thank you.